Hello, welcome to Pop Culture Maniacs' podcast. As usual, it's me and Jean, and for this episode, we'll be talking about the latest Marvel releases of Black Widow and Loki. So, Jean, hope you are well. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing, Kieran?
I'm all right. Obviously, we've done the pleasantries already before the recording, and just doing them again for you, lovely listeners. So, yes, so Marvel have had two big projects released recently. So, I think it would be best to start with Black Widow. So, because I saw in your tweet that you had the cinema all to yourself to watch it.
I did. I got myself a private screening of Black Widow, which was pretty fun.
Yeah, and I went in after the gym. I got myself to counterbalance my workout. I got popcorn. Unfortunately, the guy gave me the wrong flavor. I asked for sweet, and he gave me salted.
Oh, that's disappointing.
I know. Though a bit compared to British and American cinema tastes, I really don't like American popcorn. I do. but anyway, so Black Widow, big fine. After years of clamoring it by fans, she finally got her first film, and I think the general reaction is positive. Though there have been naysayers, they're always going to be naysayers because of various things like anti-Marvel Disney sentiment, anti-SJW. So even if you just have a female character, their minds blow up. And not without some legitimate criticisms. I'll go right on the bat. I enjoyed it quite a bit. I think it does help that it sort of combines two things I really like: superheroes and spy fiction.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed it. I didn't love it, but I enjoyed it. It did its job, in my opinion. And and I'm sure we'll get into this a little bit later. But my one thing that bugged me the most about it was that we didn't get this back right after Civil War when the movie takes place. Like, if we could have had this movie then, I think it would have pretty much been the perfect kind of appetizer to what was coming for Natasha's story.
I know. I think it's just that was when I wrote my review. I think that was the sort of big challenge, because they couldn't obviously do anything after Endgame because, spoiler alert, she dies in Endgame. So it's sort of like, and it couldn't have been, and by making it sort of like a integral, they couldn't make something so big that it would require more of the Avengers to be involved.
Yeah, I mean, like, from a story standpoint, I think it was the perfect kind of story to tell, because, like you said, there's a fun spy thriller element to it. It's always fun when you deal with ex-Soviet spies. Those are always a good time. And it was fun. I had fun watching it, but I just couldn't shake the feeling that it came too late in the game to really make the difference with the character Natasha.
Yeah.
And instead, it seemed more of a setup for Yelena and who she's going to be in the MCU than it did a real showcase for Scarlett Johansson and Natasha.
I was going to say, because what would how is it going to play in phase 4? And I think, as you say, Yelena is certainly going to have a big part, because Florence Pugh is going to be in the Hawkeye series when it comes out. And obviously, going to have to issue a very early spoiler alert here. It hints of, because obviously the big baddie having all his sleeper agents around the world, which probably is going to play a part in future MCU installments.
Yeah. Assuming Kang the Conqueror doesn't just take over everything in the MCU, it'd be interesting to see if they do actually come back to the sleeper agent aspect.
Yeah, it's because obviously for the post-credits scene, it's what's her name, Julie.
Julie Louis-Dreyfus.
Julie, yeah, she has a cameo in the post-credits scene, and obviously she already had a part in the Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
Yep, which, surprise, surprise, we should have seen her first, of course, in Black Widow, and then seen her later in Falcon and Winter Soldier, which is interesting because I've seen some people saying, well, they introduced this major character in the Falcon and Winter Soldier. I'm like, well, no, they didn't. They introduced her in Black Widow, but then had to wait a year, and then they introduced her in the Falcon and Winter Soldier. So
and I think with the way the MCU is, some things are interchangeable, and its timeline is so messed up as well. So because if you can watch them in release order, you can watch them in the order of when they're actually meant to take place. A bit like the Fast and Furious films, because their timelines are mixed up.
Oh yeah, now with Loki, where does that technically fit in? Does it fit in back after the Avengers? Does it fit in at some point anywhere after the event? Like, where does it fit in? Because time has no meaning in the TVA, so now everything's a mess.
Yeah. You say, well, I'm sure we'll talk about it later. Well, Kang the Conqueror is a time-traveling villain. He could be just basically use Marvel's reset button anytime they want.
Pretty much.
Yes. Obviously, Scarlett Johansson, she was the one obviously calling for this film. I don't think, though, ironically, she had the film was stolen from her by Florence Pugh and David Harper.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Obviously, Florence Pugh, she's been on the radar for quite a while. She's like 2019, she had a great year because she had like Fighting with My Family, Midsummer, and Little Women, and where she pretty much stole the show in those films as well. And she reminded me a lot of like Jodie Comer as Vanell from Killing Eve.
I can see that, but I mean, to me, like Florence Pugh is even more charismatic. Just every time she was on screen, she just absolutely took all the focus, and that wasn't like an intentional thing. She's just that charismatic.
Yeah.
And I, walked out of the movie thinking, I can't wait to see what she does in future films. And I've never really had that like intense feeling coming out of a Marvel movie, like being super excited to see where it's going. But her alone, she could carry a movie right now, and I would absolutely watch it.
Yeah, I'm thinking because it's like a lot of the titles of superheroes, as we've the characters can the title stays the same, but the person behind the mask could change. So obviously, like there've been other people who've been Iron Man. Obviously, we've already seen that Sam's going to be the new Captain America, and obviously, I'll be happy with Florence Pugh if she's the new Black Widow.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty clear she's going to be the new Black Widow.
Yeah. And obviously, I think David Harper as well, he was a lot of fun, just this sort of like partly comic relief, but he was also the muscle as well as the sort of, obviously, as Red Guardian.
Yeah, he did a great job. I mean, he's such an intriguing actor because he doesn't, necessarily have that traditional leading man look to him. And he's so versatile that he can handle like really dark drama or something as silly and frivolous at times as he was in Black Widow. He's such a versatile actor that I'm very intrigued to see. And once what he does next, once he's no longer saddled with Stranger Things to weigh him down for a lot of the time, I'd like to see him break out and do something different.
Certainly, I was going to say, it's certainly better than his other comic book film because he was in Hellboy, and the 2019 version of Hellboy, because the Guillermo del Toro wrote the poem "What Hellboys Are Awesome."
Mm-hmm.
So I think because admittedly I haven't actually ever seen Stranger Things. I know that's a bit of an embarrassing thing to say, but yeah, as I said, really impressed. Was really impressed by him, and I just thought he was just really fun in his role as well.
Yeah, he was clearly having a great time.
I think a little as well, the relationship between Natasha and Yelena, because obviously they had that, because obviously they were raised as sisters, and I did like it as their sibling dynamic. And I think with their comic material, it didn't just feel like that sort of forced Marvel quip style that they sometimes happens.
No, that relationship felt really lived in a way, like you said, that doesn't normally happen with MCU characters. They felt like they were siblings. There was a clear chemistry there between them, and their scenes just popped.
Yeah. And I loved the sort of like some of Yelena's moments, like saying like Natasha was a poser, and then go doing her but you go, oh, disgusting. As I said, and that's hence why something like you could picture something like the Nell from Killing Eve doing that as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. The other big question is because obviously again Falcon and the Winter Soldier showing that there already were other people given the super soldier formula, and obviously Red Guardian was obviously the Soviet version of that equation. So it'd be interesting to see what other super soldiers might pop up in the future.
Yeah, and they quote unquote destroyed all the serum in Falcon and Winter Soldier, but I think we all are sure there's something else out there somewhere. It's going to turn somebody at some point into a super soldier.
Yeah, come on, Captain Britain. We need Captain Britain.
I mean, don't you get Captain Britain in the What If series?
Or you get Peggy Carter as Captain Britain. But
see, there you go. You got Captain Britain.
Yeah. I'm sure we'll talk about the What If series anyway when we talk about Loki. Yeah. I think from Black Widow as well, because obviously being more of a spy thriller, there was a lot more practical effects and location shooting as well. Because it's particularly like that scene in Budapest, or sequence in Budapest.
Yeah.
Yeah. And because it was you got a lot of vehicular mayhem, a lot of more hand-to-hand combat.
Yeah, and personally, it's just my personal taste. I would much rather see, hand-to-hand stunt person to stunt person fight sequence than some like crazy shoot 'em up where everyone's in, jets trying to shoot each other down. I'm much more intrigued by the one-on-one hand-to-hand combat situations.
Yeah. I think is because whilst I like Captain America and the Winter Soldier, my problem with that film was it did rely too much on shaky cam and quick cuts. That's all Bourne style, and I detest that style of action filmmaking.
Yeah, I agree.
Also, I think I have to talk about the villains though, because for a brief period, Marvel seemed to be having like a really good phase of with villains, but now they're sort of going back to sort of their bland state.
Yeah, I mean, this film really wasn't about the villains. It wasn't about who she was going to take down. It wasn't about that. And I think it was pretty clear in how pointless the villains ended up being. It was much more a focus on explaining Natasha's family and again, introducing Yelena. Like those were the two keys that they wanted to give us.
Yeah, I agree with you entirely. I think that with Ray Winston's role of the villain, he was basically just meant to be the man in the suit behind the desk.
Yeah, he didn't really add much beyond just being your typical heavy who did horrible things that you're supposed to hate.
I did like the concept of Taskmaster though, like because they're pretty much copies the abilities of other superheroes. So they had the sort of various powers of not powers, but the various fighting styles of like Hawkeye, Black Panther, and Captain America.
Yeah, like that's a really cool concept, and I wish they'd spent more time like hyping that up. Because that's a really cool thing to do, or you're forcing a character to basically fight against the other Avengers. Like that's really hard. But I just felt like it didn't really go where it needed to go to create Taskmaster into something beyond just a stepping stone for them to get through.
Yeah. Again, they were just to sort of, again, if go for the Bourne comparison, so obviously Ray Winston, the big villain, and then did I say Bourne? I mean the Bond comparison. Ray Winston was the big villain, and obviously Taskmaster was like the odd job of Jaws, the heavy. Yeah. I also say the film itself also reminded me a lot of Hannah is in the Amazon series. Have you ever watched that?
I have not watched it. I saw
Okay.
some of the movie, but I haven't seen the series.
Film's great. We established this in the last podcast, so I highly recommend it. It's sort of particularly the second season of Hannah, because it's basically about the CIA training lots of teenage girls that they to be like essentially sleeper agents ready for ready to be called into missions, because no one's going to expect a teenage girl as an assassin.
Of course not.
Yeah. So it's sort of like that sort of the Red Room, sort of like that similar sort of background, sort of like Natasha and Yelena getting taught on combat and American culture, and so that they could become the perfect spies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So obviously, if you do like Hannah, it is worth checking out. And I'm talking to the audience, not just you, Jane.
Yeah, and I mean, I'd like to plug off The Americans too, if people were super excited about Russian spies hanging out in America, because that show's pretty great, and they definitely fight a lot.
And there was even a little reference to the actual real life event, wasn't there, in that opening montage, like the title sequence.
Yeah, because we actually have had sleeper agents living exactly like that here in the United States.
Yeah. It's so. Admittedly, I did give it a very high score, but I think there might have been a slight bit of bias just for having such a big film finally come out and just after having such a tough time, you just want a good film.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you're rating the film, on whether or not it's one of the greatest films ever made, of course it's not. But if you're, rating it on the scale of, was it fun? Was it engaging? Did it have good characters? Did it have a fun story? Then yeah, it absolutely did. Yeah. And it's, your quintessential popcorn film that fills in some interesting holes in the MCU and reminds you, how the MCU really did Natasha dirty for a number of years by just ignoring her.
Yeah. Scarlett Johansson finally gets a big film in it, but it just has to come so late.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I also, because the younger version of Natasha was Mila Jovovich and Paul W.S. Anderson's daughter, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I didn't realize that till afterwards, but I definitely was like, oh my God, she looks like Mila Jovovich. Like, she looks just like her. Like, and then afterwards I figured out who it was, and I was like, that makes so much sense now.
So yeah, hopefully she's got a promising career as an actress.
Yeah, she was great. I mean, both little girls were really good.
Yeah, particularly because the younger the child is, the harder it is to get the performance, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but yeah, so I think generally good. I think we're both in agreement. Pretty fun, good time film.
Yeah, if you're a fan of Marvel, you should definitely check it out. That's absolutely worth it.
Yeah, as well as I said, as well as if you like your spy stuff like Bond, Mission Impossible, things like that.
Yeah, it's one of those. It's the rare Marvel movie where you don't absolutely need to be completely versed in the MCU, because they'll fill in the pieces that you need to understand where she's at the start of the film.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So let's move on to Loki then, because obviously that's the other big Marvel property that has come out, and since we already done WandaVision and Falcon and the Winter Soldier, we may as well make it a hat trick.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes. So you've been reviewing it for the website, and your thoughts have generally been positive.
Yeah, I came in not really being a huge Loki fan. I didn't, dislike the character, but I was never super into Thor. I didn't really pay much attention to who Loki was. And I ended the season just absolutely enthralled with Tom Hiddleston's performance, with the character, with the different variants of the character that we got introduced to. And I really loved it. I think it is the first Disney Plus series from Marvel that's made it through the entire series by telling a complete story. WandaVision came real close before it decided it wanted to be a prequel to Doctor Strange. And, I found it completely compelling throughout the whole thing.
Yeah, I enjoyed it as well. I think certainly it is probably one of the most unique Marvel properties because of its interdimensional travel, travel dynamics. It's also absolutely game changing because obviously the reveal at the beginning that everything's predetermined, so it means free will doesn't exist in the MCU. So that sort of changes a lot of things also straight away.
Yep.
And obviously, because a lot of these ideas, it sort of reminded me of I think the obvious comparisons there has been is Rick and Morty, since the creator or the showrunner works on Rick and Morty, Doctor Who, his Dark Materials, since you're battling for free will and saving reality, and the Wheel of Time, because time's meant to flow a certain course, and if you try and divert it, basically the universe fights back. So if you like all that sort of thing, it's Nerdvana, basically. Nerdvana.
Yeah, and for me, I'm one of those people who, the number one thing I care about in television is the characters. And what we got over the course of these 6 episodes is a really deep dive into 2 of these characters, Loki and Sylvie, and just the caliber of writing, the caliber of the performances, the fact that in the middle of an MCU series, they were willing to take an episode and just let its 2 lead characters sit and talk for the bulk of it was crazy. And it worked.
So as if he goes as well, because with Loki, they had to fast track his character development, didn't they? Because obviously by the end of like Thor Ragnarok and Avengers Infinity War, he was more of an anti-hero than a villain. Essentially have to do that again, go from villain to anti-hero really quickly.
Yeah.
And it worked. I think I did like that really powerful moment in the first episode when he like watches the film reel of his life and that he could have had, and realizing how bad it would have been.
Yeah. And coincidentally, had the realization that despite all the awful things he's done, people in his life still genuinely cared about him, and he in turn cared about them, which is something I think, as a character, he wasn't always tapped into.
Yeah. And that's the other thing in this series, like it's this central of it was his relationships with Sylvie and Mobius.
Yeah, and I mean, he becomes a real boy at the end and has friends and has all of this going for him. And so it's an ultimate tragedy when he loses all of it again.
Yeah. I think it also just had a lot of fun with this concept again. Being like said, guy working on Rick and Morty, he had a lot of fun with like when he got to show all the various versions of Loki, because again, this is a series that has an alligator Loki who's sort of immediately gained a fan base, hasn't he?
Well, I mean, there has to be a future MCU project that not only involves Gator Loki, but also has Richard E. Grant back as classic Loki, right? Because you don't cast him in this just for one episode. He's got to come back, and of course, bring Gator Loki with him.
I think people were sort of semi-joking, but they're like they want a TV series with Gator Loki.
Yeah, why not?
The series did have a terrific cast. That obviously Tom Hiddleston reprising his role, and you obviously Owen Wilson, and he was sort of more. I'm normally used to him as a comedic actor, so he's a lot more straight in this. He had a more straight man role in this series.
Yeah, and it's a similar thing with Richard E. Grant too. It's like you don't bring Owen Wilson in just for the TV series Loki. So clearly Mobius is going to have some sort of impact later on, without delving into his comic version of himself. But he's clearly going to exist beyond this TV series, I would think.
Same with I was going to say, was it Guru Matt? How do you pronounce her name?
Yeah. Yeah.
Basically, Ray Slayer. Let's just call her by a character name, Ray Slayer.
Yep.
Because you don't cast an actress like that just for a TV series. It actually is pretty prominent on in film scene.
Oh yeah, she's an incredibly prominent actress, and more importantly, the character Ravonna Renslayer is incredibly important to King the Conqueror's story too. So as soon as her name popped up, I think every Marvel nerd's antenna popped up and said, "Oh, okay, so we're definitely gonna start getting into King the Conqueror at some point here."
Yeah, and obviously, spoiler warning for episode 6. He appears in episode 6, and you wouldn't introduce your villain of the series in the last episode, but I think, it's an episode where most of it was just them talking, and it was so compelling. It was so different because say WandaVision and Falcon and the Winter Soldier, where they had to have the big action set piece at the end.
Yeah, we didn't get that here. We didn't get a big action set piece. We got a load of exposition that was super engaging solely because of Jonathan Majors' performance as Kang. Like, I'm so excited to see the next installment with him, which there's speculation it's definitely going to be season 2 of Loki, or it's going to be Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, and he's definitely in Ant-Man and the Wasp and Quantumania.
Yeah,
but
I think it sounds like he's going to be probably going to be the big bad of the MCU to replace Thanos.
And frankly, I'm much more excited for Kang as the big bad because he's so much more charismatic than Thanos ever was.
So it's sort of like that. He's just so weirdly engaging, despite the fact that he was like a narcissistic villain who sort of controlled all of reality.
And of course, there's so many different versions of him. This is just one aspect of who Kang could be. The next one we see, I suspect, is going to be not nearly as charming and kooky.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a lot more ruthless as well if he's the truly bad version of the character. So it's going to be fun. I think as I already said when we're talking about Black Widow, he's going to be ending up if he's traveling back in time and altering history and all that, he's going to end up being the MCU's reset button.
Yeah, I mean, if you're wondering how we're going to get the Fantastic Four, the X-Men, I mean, we all talked about, multiverse and they come from multiverse or something like that, but you could just have Kang going back in time and change things where suddenly there's mutants in the MCU. Yeah. And of course, the Fantastic Four are a classic pairing with Kang. So we suspect that, at some point down the line, they're going to pop up and be involved in trying to stop Kang.
Yeah. Because obviously this series was doing the groundwork of properly setting up the multiverse, because other projects sort of like they've teased us, but they never actually gone through with it. Spider-Man, No Way Home, and WandaVision did that.
Yeah, WandaVision and Loki are interesting because they both serve the same purpose in the end, but also slightly different ones. Yeah. Because of course, Kang has connections to Wanda and her chaos magic in the comics, and I suspect she's going to be involved with Kang at some level in Doctor Strange's next film. But WandaVision was very much about setting up the Doctor Strange film and setting up Wanda as someone who needs to be punished for what she's done, or reined in for what she's done, or stopped in some way. And Doctor Strange is the only one, presumably, who can do that. On the flip side, Loki not only is setting up season 2 of Loki, but it's also setting up Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, and it's potentially going to tie into Doctor Strange as well. So you've got this web of films slowly starting to form in with the Disney Plus and make the Disney Plus series necessary, which is an intriguing choice by Disney to do that. And make people feel like they have to subscribe and watch these shows in order to truly understand what's going to happen in the MCU.
Yeah, why buy something once when you could pay for it over and over again?
Exactly.
Yeah. So I'm sure we'll talk about it in our next discussion, but it does it because they said they're not going to release like their big shows on Blu-ray. You're thinking, do you just want people to pirate them?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's either going to drive people to pirate them, drive people to find friends with Disney Plus accounts who are willing to subsidize them. I don't know how, but you're going to have to watch these shows. That's what it's ultimately going to end up doing. Because, like we talked about Black Widow, if Yelena shows up on Hawkeye, which is a series I think very few people were excited about, but if she shows up, you're going to have to watch it so that you get an understanding of how she's going to fit into the MCU moving forward, and how, her role with Valentina and her misfit gang of slightly morally questionable superheroes is going to fit in, and all of that.
Yeah. And I was going to say, since we're talking about the multiverse as well, because it's all probably going to interlink with the next Disney Plus show, What If, since they already did show the trailer for. Well, the trailer's now online, isn't it?
Yeah, and I wasn't particularly. It wasn't even on my radar, frankly, until I saw the trailer. But it looks fun. It looks like it's going to be enjoyable.
Yeah, I think it should be interesting with seeing what the potential possibilities. Though, to be honest, I wasn't so enamored by the trailer. I didn't think the animation looks anything particularly remarkable to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think my reaction was probably more of a getting to see Chadwick Boseman play T'Challa one final time, and that kind of element where you get to see characters who are dead in the MCU come back and do something different.
But it certainly, though it's very distracting that they obviously didn't get Robert Downey Jr. back.
They claim they did.
It didn't sound like him.
It did not sound like him.
No. So, but yeah, let's. I think we'll just see how it goes. I think with the What If series, if it does turn to be a bit of a flop, I don't think it's going to really detract from the rest of the Phase 4 and Phase 5 plans, though.
I think if it's a flop, they will probably simply just write it away as it was a fun, cartoon. That's all it was. It has no bearing on it. It's pretty easy to excise that element.
Yeah. Ooh. One final thing I have to say, I loved Miss Minutes in this series.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so Tara Strong, famous voice actress, and speaking of that Southern American accent. Yeah, just apparently she was only meant to do like the voice for the cartoon, but they loved her so much that they ended up giving her a bigger role.
I mean, there's nothing more terrifying than that like cheery Southern accent being spoken with like mal intent.
Yeah,
which it's so creepy.
Yeah. Also, I have to, because the series, it's because, as you say, it's you said during the Black Widow discussion that within the TVA, time has no real meaning anymore, and it does because it was quite interesting the way the TVA looked, because it was an old-fashioned bureaucracy. It's sort of it reminded me of a lot of things from the 70s and 80s. So you like had a Clockwork Orange sounding synthesizer score. You're sort of like the same like those garish colors, sort of a bit like Clockwork Orange and Legion, and a lot of like Terry Gilliam's Brazil as well, because you've got that sort of overabundance of bureaucracy. And you think that joke where you're like, is this everything you've ever said? That does feel like a joke from a Terry Gilliam film.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I think that's what helps make, because it helps stand out, because our problem with Falcon and the Winter Soldier was it didn't really do anything to stand out. And why couldn't it have just been a 2-hour film?
Mm-hmm. But this was different. This felt more like WandaVision in a lot of ways, and in a lot of what it was trying to do, change things up, makes things a little more interesting.
Yeah, it's sort of like, as I've said, it's Nirvana if you like things like your Doctor Who and Rick and Morty and stuff like that, where you know all the wibbly wobbly timey wimey issues.
Exactly, I completely agree on that.
Yeah. Do you have anything to add?
No, I think we covered it.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll wrap up here. So, listeners, thank you very much. As usual, subscribe to the YouTube channel, like us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and all that jazz. And we'll be back again. Cheers. Bye.